Hello, I'm Dr. Alex Picaro, the Director of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which is the statistical agency within the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of my colleagues and partners who are carrying out important elements of the Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA, which Congress unanimously passed nearly 20 years ago. As part of PREA, the Bureau of Justice Statistics conducts several surveys to help answer questions about how often sexual victimization occurs in correctional settings and the circumstances surrounding such victimization. The National Inmate Survey is our survey of inmates in prisons and jails for PREA. We last conducted it in 2011 and 2012. According to that study, approximately 4% of persons in prison and 3.2% of persons in jails had experienced sexual victimization within the previous 12 months in the facility where they were surveyed. BJS will be surveying inmates again in 2023 for the next iteration of the National Inmate Survey. We will ask each randomly sampled facility to provide some basic information about the facility and to provide access to inmates who are randomly selected from the facility's roster so they can be surveyed. Inmates can choose whether they would like to participate, and their answers will be kept confidential. BJS's PREA statistics are used by correctional institutions, policy advisors, researchers, advocates, and other stakeholders towards our common goal of preventing rape and sexual assault in custody. With your vital participation, we are confident we will all learn more about this important issue and how to prevent victimization going forward. RTI International was our data collection partner for the first 3 national inmate surveys, so many of you have worked with them before. They will conduct the survey again in prisons, and we are confident that they will do an excellent job for us once again. They will work with you and your staff to ensure adherence to all appropriate protocols and will strive to minimize the burden placed on you. They will now share more about what you can expect during your participation in the National Inmate Survey. Thank you so much for your partnership in this important work.
Hello, and thank you for attending our pre-recorded webinar about the National Inmate Survey in prisons. I'm Dr. Susan Brumbaugh, and I'm the Research Approvals Coordinator for the study. The purpose of this webinar is to tell you more about the National Inmate Survey and explain what you can do to prepare for the study. As Dr. Picaro mentioned, the National Inmate Survey, or NIS, is a part of the Prison Rape Elimination Act of 2003, or PREA. As specified by the PREA legislation, BJS is tasked with surveying inmates in at least 10% of prisons, identifying facilities with either high or low rates of victimization, and submitting a report to Congress that provides national and facility-level victimization rates, as well as data on the circumstances surrounding such victimization. The report to Congress must also include a list of any sampled facilities that do not participate. In support of BJS, RTI International begins our work by randomly selecting state and federal prisons to be included in the study. Within each sampled prison, the NIS methodology involves conducting in-person interviews with randomly selected prison inmates to determine the prevalence of sexual victimization in the prison during the prior 12 months. The current prisons NIS will be the 4th time the NIS has been conducted in prisons by BJS and RTI. Over the 3 prior rounds of the NIS, RTI International successfully collected data in nearly 1,500 correctional facilities with over 240,000 inmates participating. The previous rounds of NIS taught us much about sexual victimization in prisons. As Dr. Picaro described, the most recent data from the 3rd iteration of the NIS found that about 4% of state and federal prison inmates reported experiencing 1 or more incidents of sexual victimization by another inmate or facility staff in the previous 12 months. We recognize the NIS creates additional work for you and the staff of the selected prisons. We will be as flexible as we can so that the study can be conducted with as little disruption of prison routine as possible, and in a way that minimizes the amount of time the interviewing team is working in the prison. In addition, we recognize that additional precautions may be needed for the current NIS due to COVID. We will detail the precautions the study will take a little later in this presentation, and we will always abide by all facility rules and requirements. Here's how our process works. We have already begun contacting the Department of Corrections, DOC, in each state and the Federal Bureau of Prisons, BOP, for permission to contact the prisons that have been randomly selected. Once we have approval from the governing organization, one of our logistics managers will contact each prison directly to work out the logistical details, such as scheduling a date for data collection, identifying space in the prison where interviewing can take place, and determining background check requirements for the interviewing team. The logistics manager generally works with the warden or a designee at the prison, such as the PREA coordinator, compliance manager, or senior officer, to work out all the details, and will document final decisions in a logistics plan. We'll need a roster of all inmates housed at each sampled prison. This roster may be generated by either the BOP or DOC, or by the individual prisons, whichever is easiest. RTI will use this roster to randomly select inmates within the prison to participate in the survey. Data collection typically takes about 5 days. A team of interviewers will come to the prison with laptop computers to administer the interview. We know that all interviewers will have to go through and pass any required background checks. The interviewing team typically includes an on-site supervisor and about 4 or 5 interviewers. But the size of the team will vary depending on the number of inmates sampled and the space available for interviewing. The more space that can be made available, the larger the interviewing team we can send, and the faster data collection can be completed. We'll work with prison staff to have sampled inmates brought to the interviewing area or areas where they will meet one-on-one with an interviewer. The interviewer will explain the purpose of the study and what participation involves. Inmates will randomly receive either a survey that asks about experiences of sexual victimization while in the facility, or one that focuses on other topics, such as activities within the facility, visitors and outside contact, facility climate, and childhood experiences. The use of 2 surveys ensures that no one at the facility, including the interviewer, knows whether an individual inmate was asked questions about sexual victimization. Interviews generally take 30 to 40 minutes to complete and are available in English or Spanish. For the first part of the interview, the interviewer will ask the inmate questions and enter the answers into a laptop computer. After this introduction, inmates will complete the rest of the interview by wearing earphones to hear the pre-recorded questions and then entering their answers into the computer themselves by touching the computer screen. There are several things we will be asking you to assist us with. First, we'll work with you to identify a week when the interviewing team can come in to conduct the study. We'll need you to identify space where the interviewers can work in the facility. We'll discuss more specifics about this shortly. We'll need someone from the prison to be named as a contact person for the study. This person will be the point of contact with our logistics manager before the week of data collection and the person who the interviewing team can contact if any issues arise during the week of data collection. We will also need prison staff to manage the flow of sampled inmates to and from the interview area. The most efficient setup is to have multiple rooms available within a single area. For example, many prisons allow us to use multiple classrooms in an education wing or area. Having all the NIS activity in a centralized location typically reduces the number of prison staff needed to assist the interviewing team and allows the interviewers to communicate with each other more efficiently throughout the day. We have successfully conducted interviews with multiple interviewers in a large area, such as a gym, so long as inmates are far enough apart that their conversations with the interviewers cannot be overheard. We can also set up interviewing spaces in a chapel, library, or visitation area, or in the housing units, with 1 or more interviewers working per unit. Our logistics managers will work with prison staff well in advance of data collection to discuss what arrangement will work best in each prison. As I mentioned before, inmates use the interviewer's laptop to complete the survey. We understand that prison staff must have a line of sight with the inmates. The interview setting should allow this, but staff should not be able to read the laptop screen or overhear the conversation between the interviewer and the inmate. We'll also need access to a power outlet to plug in each laptop. Inmates use the laptop's touchscreen to enter their answers, and use of the laptop can still occur even if the inmate is wearing some physical intervention or restraint equipment. In some cases where a particular inmate cannot use the laptop, the inmate may fill out a paper questionnaire. This requires that the inmate has a private area to complete the questionnaire where the interviewer can directly hand the questionnaire to the inmate, and the inmate can give the completed questionnaire directly back to the interviewer. In past rounds of the NIS, the paper questionnaire has been used very infrequently, but it is a preferable alternative to not being able to interview an inmate at all. Our NIS study protocol includes precautions we've put in place to minimize the spread of COVID that have been reviewed and approved by RTI's Infectious Disease Response Team. Specific precautions designed to keep inmates, staff, and interviewers safe may include having interviewers self-monitor for symptoms of COVID and refraining from work if they've been exposed to the virus or test positive, having both the interviewer and the inmate wear masks during the interview, frequent use of hand sanitizer and sanitizing wipes for computers, and using sanitary coverings on the earphones. We'll discuss these precautions in more depth with the prison contacts, making sure that our processes and the use of any materials or equipment does not compromise the security of the prison or violate any facility policies. When it comes to inmate participation, our interviewers will explain the study to each inmate face-to-face in a private area. The interviewer will answer any questions the inmate may have, and then the inmate can make their decision about whether they want to participate. It is important to have as many of the randomly sampled inmates participate as possible. Maximizing the number of inmates who participate allows us to obtain the most complete representation of what's happening inside the prison. We can't substitute another inmate if a sampled inmate chooses not to participate. We can only interview the inmates who were randomly selected. At the same time, we don't want inmates to feel pressured to participate. So, for example, we will explicitly tell inmates that their decision regarding participation in the NIS will have no impact on any decisions regarding their release from prison. We appreciate you encouraging inmates to listen to the interviewer's description of the study before making their decision. We'll be requesting your approval to offer each participating inmate a small incentive, such as an individual serving size bag of cookies or a metered envelope. We've found these small items encourage participation, which helps our interviewing team complete their work in the prison more efficiently and reduces burden on the facility staff who are assigned to assist the interviewing team. We do understand that some prisons may not allow incentives, and we will adhere to whatever decision is made at each prison. Some inmates just enjoy getting to use the computer to enter their answers and having something a little different to do. Some inmates have said participating made them feel like they're making a difference and helping others. On each interviewing day, the interviewers will arrive at the prison as a group and complete the required check-in procedures together at the time specified in the logistics plan for the prison. Once they've set up their computers, interviewers will ask for sampled inmates to be brought to the interviewing area. We find it best not to have too many inmates waiting to meet with the interviewers, because inmates who wait a long time may become annoyed or unruly and be more likely to refuse to participate. To maximize the interviewing team's efficiency, we also don't want interviewers to have to wait too long between interviews. We'll work with facility staff to get the balance right. Interviews will continue throughout the day, and the interviewing team will follow all prison rules regarding dress code, prohibited items, and schedules. If the prison allows it, the team can work through meal times and counts. If not, the team will stop until after meals and counts are over. At the end of each day, the team will pack up all their equipment and materials and follow the prison's procedures for exiting the prison. Interviewers are employees of RTI International, the contractor BJS selected to conduct the prison study. All interviewers must clear a background check at the time they're hired by RTI. However, we know that many facilities will have their own required background check processes. We'll work with each facility to coordinate the submission of any required background check information well in advance of coming to the facility. All interviewers will complete a comprehensive training which familiarizes them with the study procedures and how to conduct themselves in a prison. Many of the interviewers have worked on correction studies before, including earlier rounds of NIS, so they're familiar with prison routines and requirements. If a facility holds a large number of inmates who speak only Spanish, the interviewing team will include one or more bilingual interviewers. If staff have any concerns while the interviewing team is working in the prison, they should feel free to contact RTI. When it comes to telling inmates about the study, our procedures require that our interviewing staff explain the details of the study to the sampled inmates. Prison staff may mention that there's a research study being conducted and encourage the inmate to talk to the interviewer to find out more. If facilities routinely post flyers about research studies and other events and want to inform the inmates about NIS, RTI will provide language that can be used to help ensure consistent messaging across sampled prisons. So here's what comes next. As I mentioned earlier, after all required research approvals are in place, each randomly selected prison will be assigned a point person from RTI called a logistics manager. Our logistics managers will reach out to collect information that is needed to create a customized plan to ensure the process will be as smooth as possible. In the meantime, if you have questions, you can contact Amy Lager, the BJS PREA Program Manager, or Rachel Casper, the RTI Project Director for the NIS, using the information on the screen. You can also send questions to our NIS Project email account. Thank you for viewing this webinar on the NIS in prisons. We look forward to working with you, and we thank you in advance for your assistance.